Hi friends, welcome back to another video with Mountain Tribe Homestead. My name's Amberly. This week started out with one amazing sunrise. We see the sunrise every morning over the mountain through these trees here, and during the months where there's no leaves on the trees, we really get a good view of it. This is one of the most beautiful sunrises I have seen living on this mountain, and I've lived on this mountain for about 35 years. So you look outside on this day and it looked like someone had a bunch of orange spotlights everywhere. This really lit up the outside into an amazing color. It was so beautiful. So in our previous video, you saw where we had started some seeds, and we have had a few little seeds sprout up on this particular week. We only had peppers planted at this point. I don't think we had any tomatoes planted, but there was just a few sproutlets coming up. We did have one of our last snows, what I believe will be one of our last snows of the year, of the winter. So we really soaked that in and enjoyed that beauty. But crossing our fingers, hopefully that's it, and we can look forward to warmer days where we can enjoy the outdoors more frequently. In our last weekly video, you saw where we had made a trip to a local market, and we picked up a great deal where I got 16 packs of strawberries, so that's 16 pounds of strawberries, and I got each of those for 62 cents. So it was an amazing deal. It was about $5 for a flat of strawberries. So we started this week out by getting those strawberries all chopped up, and we used, I can't remember how many pounds we used. I want to say we used 4 or 5 pounds of strawberries to make our pineapple strawberry jam, which is our family's most favorite jam that we make. So we had to, of all of the things that I purchased at that store, the strawberries were the first things that needed to be processed because they were going to lose their freshness the quickest. So we got to work cutting up the strawberries, and the 16-year-old and 14-year-old were such a huge help on this day, and I'm so thankful and grateful that they were volunteering to help me out. They're great helpers. So we got all those chopped up for the jelly, and then we took the rest of them and chopped them up, and we flash froze them in the freezer on trays so that they would not stick together when you put them in a Ziploc bag. So we put them in the freezer in trays. They would freeze for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then I could transfer them into bags, and they could finish off their freezing in the Ziploc bags, and that way they wouldn't freeze into just one huge chunk of strawberry that you'd have to hammer apart. That way they stay pretty separate in the freezer. So we ended up with 2 gallons of frozen chopped up strawberries, and those gallon bags were really stuffed full. So the strawberry pineapple jelly that I make, and I don't know whether it's jelly or jam, and I am one of those people that uses those terms back and forth, so I interchangeably. So I'm sorry if I'm not using the correct term. I may say jelly and the next moment I'll say jam. But I took those strawberries, chopped them up, put them in the pan with a little bit of water on the bottom so that it wouldn't burn. And then I added in about 24 ounces of crushed pineapples with the juice. And I just bought those pineapples. I did not crush them up myself. And so once we got all those cooked down and the color started coming out of the strawberries and everything was extra soft, I took my immersion blender and I emulsified all of the pineapples and strawberries together. Before I had an immersion blender, I went many years without an immersion blender, and I just would take this jelly that I made and I would blend it up in my food processor until it was pureed, and then transfer it back into the pot to heat it back up. So if you don't have an immersion blender, the food processor works just as well. So I got these all blended up and pureed. We don't like chunks in any of our jams or jellies, so at this point it's all pureed and I can add my sugar. Currently, for my jams and jellies, I just use your regular old pectin that you can get from the grocery store, which means that there's a lot of sugar that's needed. I cannot remember off the top of my head the amount of sugar that is used for this, but it is a ridiculous amount. But in my next order that I am going to be ordering from Azure Standard, I'm going to be switching over to Pomona's pectin, which allows you to use way less sugar with your jams and jellies. The fruit is sweet enough, you really shouldn't need to use too much sugar, and the amount of sugar that goes into jams and jellies is just unreal to me. So hopefully we can get switched over. So we got the jam, jelly, whatever you want to call it, we got that all canned up and it all sealed up pretty well. I got quite a bit for the pantry. There were a handful of lids that did not seal. I am going through my stock that I had purchased previously and switching over to new lids because I'm tired of dealing with sealing issues when I'm canning. Okay, another recipe that we got and worked through this week was a fridge dump soup. And so I got all of this stuff out of the fridge and pantry and I'm just dumping it into a pot to make soup. And so I made a big turkey the prior week, and I'm going to take the leftover remaining turkey and I'm going to get all of that meat off the bones and get it into the pot. Those green onions that I was showing you a second ago, I ended up deciding not to use them because these big huge honkin' strawberry onions did the job just fine. And then I had some leftover green beans and corn from a couple meals I threw in there, some canned red kidney beans I canned up I threw in there, and some canned carrots. And then these 2 jars are the drippings that I saved from last week's turkey that I cooked up in the oven. And you can see how gelatinous it is. It really solidified in the fridge as it's been waiting for me to use it up. And then I went under the house into the pantry storage and grabbed up some 3 quarts of turkey broth. And I grabbed a 5-pound pack of potatoes. And I didn't use the whole 5 pounds. I want to say I used probably 3.5 pounds of potatoes for this soup. And so I got the onions chopped up and the turkey meat off the bones and the potatoes chopped up and all of the broth and the drippings, and I got all of that into the pan. And I let just those ingredients sit in the pan and cook down for a long period of time. Because it takes so long for the potatoes and onions to get soft, I decided to cook those for a while. That way I didn't overcook anything else. So this sat on the stove for a while and it made the house smell delicious. And then once all of that was soft and cooked down, I added the remainder of the ingredients. So I've got a quart of canned carrots. I put in there a quart of red kidney beans. I had 2 quarts of the turkey drippings, which was just what was in the bottom of the pan after I cooked that big huge turkey last week. And it has some meat in there, and it's just all of the good flavorful deliciousness that I didn't want to lose out by leaving it in the pan. And then some leftover corn and green beans went in, and then I took the turkey meat very last and put that in the pan. I had already cooked it in the oven. I didn't want to cook it too much more, so I saved that for last to put into the pan and got everything all mixed up. And this soup was amazing. It was so amazing. I didn't follow a recipe. It's just a fridge dump. I just took what I could find in our pantry and our fridge and just threw it together and made a new meal out of some old leftovers. And then along with that soup, I went ahead and made some garlic butter breadsticks from the refrigerator dough. And it went along very wonderfully with this soup. I wish I would have made more of those garlic butter breadsticks, but now I know for next time I need to double the batch. But I will link the recipe to the refrigerator dough down below that I use for many things. I use that refrigerator dough for pizza dough, and I use it for rolls and these breadsticks and cinnamon rolls, jam rolls. I use it for all sorts of things. So if you have been following us for any period of time, whether it be on YouTube or Instagram, you will have learned that I am all about prepping my breakfast the night before. I've said many times it takes me a long time to wake up in the morning, and the more stuff I have done the night before in preparation for my morning, it makes my morning just that much easier. So I am currently here making a recipe for breakfast muffins, and so I'm just basically taking a basic breakfast muffin recipe, and I took some cranberries from cranberry juice that I strained out, that the cranberries were left over, and I have the 7-year-old here who volunteered to squash those cranberries up for me. So we've got the leftover cranberries from 2 quarts of cranberry juice, and we're mashing those up. And then when I went to the local market for that big bulk order I did last week, I got some organic oranges, and so I have zested 2 oranges, and I'm going to put the orange zest and those smushed cranberries and put them in that basic muffin mixture, and we mixed it all together for our breakfast the next morning. And you can see those strawberries in the background I have pulled out from the freezer they are ready to go in the freezer when I can have room from pulling out another pan that was in there waiting to get frozen from chopping those strawberries up that day. So 7-year-old's just mixing everything together for us, and we're getting this all together for the following morning while that soup is cooking on the stove. You will have also learned over the time of following us that I do not follow most recipes. I followed a recipe for this basic muffin mixture, but me adding in these cranberries and the orange zest was just me winging it. I was not following any sort of measurements. I was trying to think of something to use up these cranberries for, because something else that you will have learned by following me for a while is that I do not like kitchen waste, and I will save what I can and find out a way to use it to help prevent kitchen waste. And so that's another thing that I'm doing here with these cranberries, is helping prevent kitchen waste. And that's what made me find this decision to make these cranberry orange breakfast muffins for the following morning. So the 7-year-old's just getting it all mixed up there, and it is just looking wonderful. And I threw it in a pie pan because it's much easier to clean up than a muffin dish. And I learned this trick from Jessica at 3 Rivers Homestead. It saves so much time cleaning. It's easier to put in the fridge the night before. It doesn't take up as much room. It's not so messy when you put it in the pan, and so on and so on. It's just an amazing idea. So the zested oranges, I got the teenagers to eat those for me, since they needed to get eaten since we zested them. And then going along with the whole preventing kitchen waste, we save our orange peels and we put them in a bowl, and we keep the orange peels in the fridge, because I do make our own all-purpose cleaner by infusing those orange peels into white vinegar. So that's why we save the peels. And the next morning, this is what that cranberry orange muffin mixture looked like. It turned out amazing. I personally love cranberry orange muffins. So this was such a wonderful recipe to figure out that I could do with those cranberries, and I'm definitely going to be continuing to make these more frequently. So the next morning after breakfast, I'm going to show you what I was able to take care of. I'm going to try to do this in here. It's probably going to be noisy because of the dogs, but I want to show you something. Yesterday I made, don't mind the mess, Yesterday I made a huge stock pot full of leftover meat from the turkey I made last week, and I threw in all of the ingredients, and it filled this up to 8, I think it was 8 quarts. Let me see. It was either 8 or 10 quarts. And we ate on it. And I just want to say that if you find any of these little containers that you buy, you know, we went somewhere and got cotton candy, and I saved these. So they come with this lid, right? They're perfect for freezing things in. So if you save those and you have extra food you don't know what to do with to store it, you can just use these little containers, put it in the freezer. You just have to leave some room at the top because the liquid will expand. But I have all of these filled up, and then these are old lunch meat containers, and I just saved the lids, and I've got these filled up. This little container someone gave us, and I'm sending this jar over to my parents. They live next door, so I thought they would like to have that for dinner one day. Now, I didn't can any of this because the turkey was already cooked, and then it was reheated up again in the soup. So I didn't want to can it up and have it cooked a third time. So that's why I'm choosing to freeze it all. I left this out all night so it'll cool all the way off. So this is room temperature before I put it in the freezer. And then as we want meals, we can just pull one out, thaw it out the night before in the fridge, and then pour it on the stove, heat it up. So that'll give us, this is probably together, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 meals for 2 people. So make things in big batches, and then you can freeze the extra and have meals already ready to go. So that soup I ended up putting in the refrigerator so that I could cool it off all the way before putting it in the freezer. And during that process of waiting for it to cool it off all the way, people kept grabbing it and eating it. And so I ended up only freezing 3 containers because the rest of it got eaten because everyone loved it so much. So anyways, heading underneath the house, we are now going to move on to working through preserving our onions. If you watched the previous video on my little mini haul of where I got some bulk food at a local market about an hour away from us, a little small business, I got 50 pounds of onions. And so I'm going to start working through these onions now that I have already processed all of the strawberries. And so I took my little reusable grocery bag under the house and grabbed about 25 onions because I didn't know exactly what I was going to be, how much I'm going to need. So I got about 8.5 pounds of the onions chopped up and put in the pot, and I put it in the pot with a bunch of butter, and I cooked it down for the entire day, and I made maple onion jam. So 8.5 pounds of onions and a 1/3 cup of balsamic vinegar, 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar, 3/4 cups of brown sugar, 1/4 cup of maple syrup, 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, and cooked it down and processed it for over 12 hours, and it gave me 7.5 pints, and I just water bathed that. I will put the recipe down below. So moving on, we began adding in some more seeds to our shelves. We started a whole lot of peppers the prior week, and so this week we are starting some tomatoes. So I've got, of course, my little helper. She's always willing to lend a hand whenever I am working on a project. And so she is just enjoying filling up those little seed starting trays that I'm so excited to use. And we are going to be starting some tomatoes on this day. I have a video, a seed starting video, where I went through what seeds I was going to be starting in the next few weeks, and so I will link that video down below so that if you want to go check it out, you can go check it out. So here are a few of the seeds that we are planting on this day and getting started in our seed starting trays. This is my first year using these types of seed starting trays. I found out about them recently, a few months ago, and I have been keeping an eye on comparing the different prices, and I found them the cheapest at Tractor Supply, so I got 2 trays for us to give it a shot this year. So far I am loving how big the sections are for each of the seedlings to go in, or each of the seeds to go in, and it seems like the amount of room that is there for the seedlings to grow, you won't have to transplant them as often, which I'm excited about. I love how the bottom of them are silicone, so you can just push it up and pop out the seedlings when they are very young, when you do need to transplant them. So I'm just giving the 7-year-old some seeds, and she's putting them in the little holes and covering them up, and we have labeled them. And as you can see, Luca Boy here is sniffing the dirt and trying his very hardest not to lick the dirt. That is something that we have been battling, is these puppy dogs are going over to the shelves, and for some reason they are wanting to lick the dirt. They find the dirt and the seedlings in these seed trays very interesting. I don't know what it is about them, but so every week we do have a very long to-do list, and we are always jam-packed with our schedule, and we are never getting to the end of that to-do list, and it just seems like it is ongoing. But I just want to remind you that it is okay to push pause and ignore that to-do list and chill out and have fun with each other. It's okay to push it aside and enjoy those little moments with each other, because those little moments are not moments that you are going to get back. It's okay to stop the to-do list for a little while. All right, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to talk about something that's very important and beneficial that I have learned over the years, and that is sharing land or living in close proximity to a group of friends or your family members. So, one of the benefits of having your family live all next to each other means there's always someone home. So, my dad left for work, and it's extra windy, and so he forgot to cover up some roofing. And so I got an early morning call, sorry about the sun, I got an early morning call to come over here and throw some heavy stuff on his roofing so it wouldn't go blowing everywhere and get wrapped around a tree. He leaves for work pretty early, and I'm usually up before everyone, so I was the only one awake. I was drinking my coffee. So I'm in my jammies, and I came over here. I threw on the 14-year-old's chicken shoes, and I'm gonna go ahead and do her chicken chores for her. The teenagers alternate days of taking care of the chickens, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that for her since I'm already over here. The only reason I'm bringing this up this week in this video is because during this particular week there were many calls that were made between a handful of people that weren't able to get home in time, that they needed to take care of something, and they needed one of us to handle it for them, or they left the house and forgot to do something, or whatever, or they left town and they were wondering if you could go pick something up and then bring it to town for them when you came to town. But whatever it may be, there's many benefits. Not only, those types of benefits, but you get to be around the people that you love regularly and see them so easily, and it just brings another level of happiness to life. I know that not everybody has that opportunity and they don't have that choice, and that's okay. But if you are in a position where you have that opportunity and you do have that choice, I really encourage you to go ahead and venture down that road and try to figure out a way to make it happen, because there are so many more positives to that way of living than I think a lot of people realize. So yeah, if you can create a location where you are living on a piece of property with other families, like friends or family members, and kind of gather together and all live near each other, it's really helpful, because there's usually always someone home. All right, next on the agenda for this week is start preserving these pears. When you buy in bulk, it is very important that you get to preserving them as soon as possible. So this week, depending on how much time I had to dedicate during the day, I would base my decision on what to preserve that day off of the amount of time I had to dedicate it. So on this week, I started working on preserving these pears. I think I got 9 pounds preserved into pear sauce, and the rest of the pears, I am going to just peel them and slice them up and preserve them in just a light, simple syrup. So I started this in the morning time. So I've got my coffee there at the table, and then you can see the 7-year-old is sitting there with a few of her school books, and she is working through some of her school at the table. That way I am there to help her while I'm getting these pears preserved. And as she gets older, she is becoming more and more independent with her schoolwork. She's so very intelligent and picks up so quickly on a lot of things that she learns, that with a lot of things that she has for her school, she really doesn't need a massive amount of my help with just the basics. Now, when we do projects and stuff like that, it's definitely something that I do sit down with her, and we do go through history books and read stories and that kind of thing. But she loves being here at the table while she's doing her school if I'm working on a project, because it means that she gets to feel like she's included in those projects. As you've seen in all the videos that I've been creating and posting here, she always likes to get her hands into the projects whenever I have something going on. So anyways, I've got these 9 pounds of pears, and I've got them peeled and sliced up, and I've got them into this stock pot. I put a little bit of water in the bottom so it would help prevent sticking, and I'm just cooking them down, and they are going to cook down here for a few hours. And then as they cook down, I'm just taking kind of a potato masher and mashing them up as they soften to chop them into smaller pieces, and it's going to make it a lot easier to bring that immersion blender over. And then once I have that immersion blender, I'm going to emulsify it so it's all pureed, and then it's going to be pear sauce. We do not like chunks or peelings in our applesauce or pear sauce. So I always make sure the peelings are completely gone, and I always make sure that everything is 100% pureed, because that is the consistency that we prefer when we have pear sauce or applesauce. So with the pear sauce, I just pureed it all. I had lemon juice in there with the water as I was peeling them to help prevent it from browning. And then I didn't really add much sugar to my pear sauce. These green pears were already sweet enough, and they just needed very, very little sugar added for any extra sweetener. So I'm just getting it all pureed down, and then at this point I had already gotten my canner out and the jars washed and sanitized, and they are heating up in the canner. And as soon as this is pureed, I will get the hot jars and I will pour the hot pear sauce in there. I'll wipe the rims and debubble them, and I canned these up in half pints. I am having to pick and choose which jars I am going to be putting my jams and jellies and condiments and pear sauces and apple sauces. I'm going to have to be putting them in smaller jars because I need to save my pints for this year. I have a lot more things I'm going to be canning up in pint-sized jars, and I need to start emptying those out, and then as I'm preserving new things, I am going to be switching those things over to my half pint sizes until I can bulk up my pint-sized jar stock. So I've got it all in the canner, and I've got the water covering it, and then I just need to bring it back to a boil, and I think I processed those for 15 or 20 minutes, I can't remember, in my water bath canner. It's been very nice a couple of the days out of this week. We went from snowing in the beginning of the week to almost summer-like temperatures near the end of the week. So the dogs got to go out on the porch and get a good brushing by the 7-year-old, and the 14-year-old loves brushing the dog's hair too, or the dog's fur too. So the dogs got multiple brushings at the end of the week with that warmer weather. I have recently also mentioned that I am currently working on restocking some of my inventory for Mountain Tribe Homestead. I am making medicinals for our family, and every time I do that, I make extra for Mountain Tribe Homestead inventory to sell to other families. And so this week I decided to bottle up some more lavender oil. This is just grapeseed oil that is infused with lavender plants that we grow here on our homestead in the garden. And I had infused this oil over the fall time and bottled up a whole bunch of lavender oil. We have used up our stash, and all of the lavender oil had already sold out. So I took some of the remaining lavender oil and decided to bottle up some of it. And then as I order more little glass bottles, I will bottle up some more, because this did not bottle up all of the lavender oil. But I've just got it all bottled up, and I'm just going to put the lids on it and get it labeled up and added to the inventory in the Mountain Tribe Homestead stock. And then I'm going to put a couple up in our medicine cabinet for our family to use. So I got all of this bottled up and ready to go while I was waiting on that pear sauce to finish canning itself up in the water bath camera. If you are interested in purchasing any of that, I will link our website down below, and you can just click our website and it'll take you to our shop where you can purchase any of that or anything else you would like to check out and see what we have available. So here is the pear sauce. It canned up beautifully. It kind of turned out to have like a pinkish hue to it. I'm not sure why, but we have since canned this. We have had some with some of our dinners, and it is just so delicious. The girls will sit down, and some of them will be able to sit down and eat a half pint all by themselves. So I'm definitely going to need to be canning up more pear sauce. So originally I had only planned to can 9 pounds of pears into pear sauce, but I think I'm going to have to switch that around and add a little bit more in my plans. So it's another day, but I wanted to say another benefit of sharing property with family or friends is that when you have leftovers that you don't know what to do with, you can just deliver them next door. So I'm taking my parents some cranberry orange muffins and some of my turkey vegetable soup. So I'm going out to the compost. Today was a big day of peeling pears. And just because it's winter time and cold outside does not mean the compost stops. So I'm taking all of the pear kitchen scraps out to the compost area. And I figured I would bring you along. So basically what I do during the winter time, if it's late in the evening, just as a quick to do, my compost process is not thorough every single day I go out there. I just dig a hole in my compost area, I dump out my kitchen scraps, and then I bury it back into the compost pile, and I put fresh leaves, not green leaves, but fresh leaves that aren't already in the compost area. I scoop them over on top of the compost pile. And during the later months, I will make a more in-depth process video about what I do during other seasons of the year when I am composting our kitchen scrap. It's pretty full. I'm not gonna water it, but it's getting pretty full. You can see it's almost filled all the way up. And the reason I'm not going to water it is because in 2 days we're supposed to get some rain. And so I am going to be lazy and just wait for that rain to come so I don't have to go all the way across the property, get the water, bring the water over to the compost. I don't have water near my compost area, so I'm just gonna wait it out. But it looks like this bin is starting to get full, so we are going to be transitioning into the third bin, and we're going to be finding a new home for that scrap wood that Matthew piled in there so kindly. And here soon I'm going to empty the first area, which you can't see it. If you look at my compost bin, compost area tour, I walked you through all of everything back here and how I made it and whatnot. And the first bin here is getting ready to get emptied because we are going to spread it over the gardens. So something flew at my face. And then once that's empty, then I can take, after this gets watered down some and sits for a bit, I will flip it into the empty one, and then this one will be empty while I'm using the third one. And then we'll just cycle through, and then as I need a new one, we'll get the next level of compost put on the gardens in the fall. And then by that time, this one will need flipped into a new bin, and I will flip it into the new bin. So I just wanted to bring you guys along, let you know that it's chilly outside, but compost and kitchen scraps still doesn't end, because it takes time to make good compost. So it's important to do it all year round. Oh, and if you guys have any questions on composting or the best way to go about it and the easiest and cheapest way to go about it, send me a message or leave some comments, and maybe I'll make a video more in depth on composting itself when the time comes. But I gotta get inside. It's starting to get dark, and you guys aren't gonna be able to see me here in a bit. So that's it. All right, so we started our week with just a few sproutlets popping through the soil there, and we are ending our week with quite a bit more sproutlets popping through the soil. So every week we will go through the sproutlets and see how many we have, popping through, and as you can see, we even had one of the broccolis we planted in the middle of the week pop through. That was very, very quickly for that in our new seed trays. But that's it for this video, friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!